but we're talking about soul detox. And this week we are talking about the seduced soul. And I think people could probably panic because, we've gone through the weeks and it's been first week, restless soul, it's oh yeah, that's cool. Then it's the heavy soul and it's okay, getting a little bit more on the inside. And then you hear the tortured soul, and then you hear the suffering soul, and I was what is this last week going to be? It's going to be the crushed soul, the non-existent soul, the soul that's died. I don't know, I just feel it could have gotten worse and worse. But we're actually talking about the seduced soul today. And so I guess my prayer for everyone this morning as we go through this message is that whether you're close to Jesus right now or still figuring out this whole thing, my prayer is that today's message just draws you closer to Him. So before we get into it, I want to tell you guys a story. Who here loves fireworks? Children. Oh, so many people. Because I'm a bougie fireworks enjoyer, I guess. If you're going to a random side of the road fireworks selling thing, I'm not going to pay money for that because they all suck. I'm just being honest. They're all terrible. But way back before Z was built, we used to be able to have those cool fireworks shows at the stadium. Who remembers that? And I remember going as a kid, and I was I'm never playing with fireworks in the backyard ever again because this is just so epic and amazing. And we went, and you could go, and they had all those food trucks and stuff. So I remember sitting there at 8, 9 years old with some hot chips, my little glow stick, or sparklers and stuff, waiting for the show to start. And I just remember lying on the hill and seeing these massive fireworks just going off. And I remember thinking they're so big and so amazing. I could just reach out and touch it. And I was they're gonna fall on me, freaking out because of how big and spectacular it is. And I just remember in the middle of this show, I'm hearing this kid crying in the background, and I'm he's kind of ruining my experience right now. This crying kid that's being annoying, and he just wouldn't stop moaning and whining. And I was what is this kid on about? So I turn around and look behind me, and he's crying to his mum because his sparkler's gone out. And I just remember thinking, who cares about your little sparkler when we've got this massive fireworks show going on? And I think that can be the same with our faith. How often are we mesmerized by a little sparkler that we're holding in our hand, forgetting about God's glory that's going on behind us? And I guess what I want to say to you this morning is that sometimes we settle for something small and shiny, and we forget that idols dazzle, but God glories. And we've been seduced by the dazzle. So if you've been tracking along with us, you've heard this a bunch of times, that we're not a body with a soul, but a soul with a body. And so, I guess we have to remember our bodies, they're temporary, but our soul is the thing that's eternal. And so why don't you turn with me to 1 Peter 2:11 and see exactly what it's warning us about. And it says, "Dear friends, I warn you as temporary residents and foreigners to keep away from worldly desires that wage war against your very souls." And if you really think about that and understand that, it actually means that the world around us isn't as neutral as we think it is. There's things that are waging war for our very souls, waging war for our attention. And if your soul loses, more things are lost than you would think. Everything is lost. And Jesus says in Mark 8:36, "What do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul?" And I think we live in a world that is obsessed with fighting all kinds of battles, right? We're battling against pollution, we're battling against inflation and stuff, we're even battling against cholesterol and things like that, battling against sugar. But almost nobody talks about the battle for the human soul. We've become aliens in a world that believes, I guess, and is committed to the inconsequential. While the biggest question goes unanswered, and I think the biggest question we should have for ourselves this morning is, How do I save my soul? And how do I live in a way that glorifies God? So if we focus on detoxing our bodies, but ignore the condition of our soul, we're at risk of missing the whole point. And here's the truth, is that most of our souls, I would argue that almost everybody here has a soul that's been subtly seduced. We've been drawn in, distracted, deceived, without even knowing it. And so a lot of times we talk about detoxing our bodies, which can be important, but we forget about detoxing ourselves from those idols that seduce us so subtly. So if we're going to talk about idols and being seduced, it's always good to look at what God says about it. So let's turn to Exodus 20:3-4. And it says, "You must not have any other God but me. You must not make for yourself an idol of any kind or an image of anything in the heavens or on the earth or in the sea." He then re-emphasizes this in Deuteronomy 4:16-19. "Do not corrupt yourselves by making an idol in any form, whether of a man or a woman, an animal on the ground, a bird in the sky, a small animal that scurries along the ground, or a fish in the deepest sea. And when you look up into the sky, see the sun and the moon and the stars, all forces of heaven, don't be seduced into worshipping them. The Lord your God gave them to all the peoples of the earth." Don't you find it really funny that God has to be so specific with us? He's like, so it's not just like, don't worship anything else, just worship me. It's like, fish, don't. If they're in the sea, don't do that. Birds in the sky, don't do that. Animals on the ground, just animals in general, don't do that. He has to get so specific with us. And I was thinking about, why does God say this? And I think he knows, and he's trying to show us that our souls were created to worship. And if we don't worship him, we'll end up worshiping something else. And I think it's so easy for us today, because I know I do it, to just dismiss idolatry, because I don't know about you, but I don't have like a golden calf statue in my lounge, or the cedar poles, or random, they're like, oh no, I won't go there. Some people getting, yeah, that's what I was talking about. The cat at the thing where people get really obsessed about the cat. Or I don't go out and look at the moon and the sun and just in the moonlight pretend I'm a werewolf or something like that. But I think, sorry, I got distracted. Because we can think of we think of idols as being irrelevant or silly or having no bearing on our modern lives, right? And we have these verses like in the one before where it's, when you look up into the sky, see the sun, see the moon, see the stars, see all the forces of heaven, don't be seduced into worshipping them. And God knows, and we need to know so deeply, that our souls were created to worship. Because when we don't know this, worldly things don't just distract us, but they actually corrupt the very purpose of our soul. You were made for glory, not glitter. You were made for fireworks, not sparklers. And if you give your soul to lesser things, you are missing the glory that can be shown in your life. Our lives can be full of things from this world, yet we let our souls get so empty. We can view idolatry, like I said, as irrelevant in our world today, but I'm begging you, if you do that, you're going to be subtly seduced. It's almost guaranteed. If you fall into the trap of believing that we don't battle with the sin of idolatry, it's a lie, we do. And the reason we don't recognize it is because it is so subtle. We've been seduced into worshipping a counterfeit. So let me give you an example that I hope will help you. I remember in Bible college, we had a lecturer come to us and he talked all about his missionary trips. I feel like he was just kind of trying to recruit instead of actually give a lecture about what he was talking about, but that's fine. And he was talking about his trip that he took to India, and he remembers before going, they were talking a lot about the very obvious and big pool of idolatry that it has in this remote village that he was going to there. And so he's kind of a curious guy and very fascinated by this, and he's like, if I see anyone doing any idol worship, I'm I'm just going to ask them why, because I find this so interesting. And so he told me that he was just walking through the markets, and then he just sees this woman slaughtering chickens onto an altar. And he's just like, this is crazy. Like, it's the middle of a market, and we're all just watching this woman slaughter these chickens. It's so odd, and everyone's just kind of like watching. And so he ends up being like, I'm a curious guy, I'm just going to start talking to her. So he goes to her, like, this is so tragic. Like, why do you do this? And she kind of scoffs at him and turns around and says, like you can talk. And he's like, what? What do you mean? You're literally sacrificing chickens on an altar right now. Like, how? Of course I can talk. I'm watching you do this. And she goes, well, I've actually been to Western countries before, and I would say that they're the most idolatrous countries in the world. Every single person there worships idols. And he was like, what are you on about? He said, what do you mean? And she goes to him, you worship food. You talk about it, dream about it. It's on your little pocket phones and it's everywhere. All you talk about and look at is food. And then when it comes to sports, there's people wearing all the same uniforms and painting their faces and yelling and screaming like someone's dying, like it's life or death. And then you go into their houses and their whole house is revolved around the screen on the TV, and everyone just sits there and watches it for hours, worshipping it. And suddenly he said that he saw it. The irony that she couldn't see her own idol, but he also couldn't see his. We've been seduced. We've taken good things and turned them into God things. And it's time for a soul detox. So how do we do that? How do we detox a seduced soul? And that is, we need to dethrone the idols of our souls. So my first point for you today is that we need to identify our idols. Psalm 24 verses 3-4 says, who may ascend into the hill of the Lord, or who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to an idol, nor sworn deceitfully. The phrase in this where it talks about lifted up, in the Greek it actually means to give weight or to elevate something in our heart. And here's the challenge. I think it's very easy to justify and rationalize and bring excuses as to why things aren't idols. And we can have interests and hobbies, and those are all great things. But I think for some of us, if we're truthful, if we're honest, there's some things that have become so important that they've actually become dangerous to our souls, and we haven't even realized it. So here are 3 things to look at when trying to identify your idols. The first thing is, how do you spend your time? The vast majority of your time, if it's spent on the same thing, I would say maybe you need to check that out. The second thing is, how do you spend your money? Are you spending a lot of your money towards one thing, or maybe that thing takes precedent over your tithe and things like that? How are you spending your money? Are you giving money more towards this thing or towards the kingdom of heaven? How do you find your conversations? I don't know about you, but when I have conversations with people, I often find that my mind will just go to whatever I'm thinking about the most. That's how my conversations go. So are your conversations drifting towards that one thing that you're kind of obsessing over? When you have a conversation about Jesus, how long does that last compared to your conversation about something else? That might help you too. And I don't know what that could be for you. It could be a lot of things. It could be your house. You've just got renovations happening all the time, and you find that every conversation you have is about your renovations or your perfect lawn. Maybe it's your appearance. You're always looking at fashion, the right brands, the right outfit. You're spending time looking in the mirror a lot more than you are reading your Bible. Maybe it's your kids. And I think that's a really hard one because they're precious and we should love them and count towards them, but are they sitting on the throne of your life? Maybe it's your Saturday. Nothing can touch your Saturday. It's sacred. Don't plan anything. It's a do nothing, stay at home day. Is that something that you hold with more reverence than your Sunday? Is it your online identity, the likes, the comments, the follower count? Is it your career? Are you chasing your calling or just chasing control? And none of these things are bad. But when they take the throne of our soul, they become idols. I'm really embarrassed, but I feel like I need to talk about it because I've got the most cliche Gen Z ever realization that my phone has become an idol in my life. Boring, annoying. Don't want to admit it to a bunch of adults being like, oh, me as a Gen Z has an addiction to my phone. But, you know, I use it to avoid boredom, but I've realized that I actually use it for more than that. If I feel uncomfortable in a group, I pull it out and I hide behind it. If I'm just too tired from socializing with everyone, I use it as an escape and I scroll instead of engage. If I'm upset, I decide I don't need to process it. I can just pull out a bunch of funny videos and scroll endlessly and numb it all out. And I've embarrassingly said things like this when I've forgotten it, and I've said, I feel naked without it, or I feel like I've lost a limb. And I can have all the excuses in the world, right? It's the 21st century. I need it for work. I need it to talk with friends that aren't around. And I can say it's a need and I have to have it for my life. But if I'm honest, I know it's taken a place that it shouldn't and that it was never meant to have. It had taken the place of refuge that only God should fill. I was numbing out on my phone instead of kneeling. I was consuming instead of connecting with my Creator. And I think that we have idols that are hard to admit. I remember when the whole wedding planning thing just became like your whole life when you're planning a wedding, and like I've got this whole picturesque version of everything, and I'm like, oh, I have to have the cute house with the cute rug, and I want everyone to low-key be jealous of my wedding photos and be like, look how beautiful that wedding was, and things like that. And that becomes an idol. And then I remember earlier in our marriage, Uti and I kind of realized that we weren't holding the right priorities in our marriage. It was more putting the others or ourselves first than the next person, depending on how I was feeling. Sometimes it was me first, sometimes it was him. But God ended up being last, because when we're too tired and we're in bed and we're supposed to be praying, we'd just decide, nah, we're just going to go to sleep. Or we're supposed to be waking up early and reading our Bibles together, but we treasured the sleep in maybe a bit more than we did the time with God talking about reading our Bibles together. And we didn't mean to, but God ended up being last. So whatever it is for you, maybe it's a relationship like I've just explained, maybe it's your comfort, your image, your success. God is gently but firmly inviting you to detox your soul. Let the lesser things go. Reclaim your worship. Let God take his rightful place on the throne of your life. Because anything else is just a sparkler when you could have fireworks. But identifying your idol isn't actually the end. It's probably the easiest part. The next thing that I want you to do is you need to tear down your idols. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the story of Gideon, and who knows how awesome of a story that is, where it's like God reduces Gideon's army over and over again, and he's only got 300 people, and he's supposed to face this massive army of Midianites, and they somehow overcome in victory. But do you know that before that, before Gideon even picks up his sword, God tells him to do something about the idolatry in his own backyard. His first assignment isn't a battle out there, it's a battle within. In Judges 6, verse 25 to 26, we see Gideon's first task, and it says, that night this happened. God said to him, take your father's best 7-year-old bull, the prime one, tear down your father's bowl altar, and chop down the Asherah fertility pole beside it. Then build an altar to God, your God, on the top of this hill. Take the prime bull and present it as a whole burnt offering using firewood from the Asherah pole that you cut down. Before revival could actually happen around him, it had to start within him. God doesn't give him a pep talk or like a strategy session where he's like, oh, like, I can see that you've got these idols here, so maybe like just build me an altar, but like make it bigger so I know that it's like more important than the other ones and things like that. He's not like, taking it soft and slow with Gideon, like, that's kind of a bit problematic, like, why don't we look at doing that? Here's some strategies to, start moving in the right direction. God is direct and gives him a demolition order. He tells him to tear down the altar to Baal, cut down the Asherah pole. There needs to be a righteous anger that bubbles up within us, like God gave to Gideon in that moment. I'm not going to let anything stand between me and my relationship with God. Anything that stands in that way, I'm going to obliterate it. I'm going to crush it. I'm going to tear it down. The danger is this, that we name the idol, we even learn what God says about it, and we do nothing. We shrug it off. We justify. We say things like, well, that's my thing. Like, everyone's got their thing, We know what Craig's thing is. We know what, Verma's thing is, So that's just my thing. Like, it's my little thing. Like, it's all right. Like, I know it's not the best, but like, I love it. It's like, it's my thing. So it's all right. But can I tell you that if we just let idols exist, they don't just stay put in the corner. They grow. They take. They demand. And sometimes they take more than just your own peace or closeness with God, but they take away from the people around you too. I remember in school, there was this girl whose dad was like a hard worker. He worked for like some Fortune 500 company or something like that. And so she used to be able to take the most lavish vacations. I remember one time she came home and she was like, guys, I just went to Disneyland for a whole week. And I'm like, so jealous. This is so epic at being like 10 or 11 years old. But as I got older, I realized that in her father's pursuit of career or money, it could look noble, he could say things like, I'm building a future for my family, I'm making more and providing, I'm making sure that they have something when I pass, things like that. But I remember the struggle she was going through as a child. She was being horrifically bullied, and her father didn't even know about it because he had put this idol of career and success so high up. And then I remember talking to her one time and she said, success matters to my dad more than I do. And I know this might be hard to hear, but it's often that's how we interpret it, right? And it's how it hurts others around us. And I know this might be a bit painful, but I've had parents come to me and say, my child doesn't want to go to church anymore. And in some cases, I actually understand why. It's not always because of rebellion, the classic, that's what we always say, they're just rebelling. But sometimes it's because church never became a rhythm in their life. It was optional. Youth wasn't a priority. Church on a Sunday wasn't a priority. And slowly other things like sports, sleepovers, sleeping in took its place. And the truth is, kids don't just learn from what we say. They learn from our actions. They absorb what we prioritize. And when they see us consistently choosing something else over our faith community and over a relationship with God, they will do the same. And I'm not trying to say this to heap shame on you and be like, shame on you and your parenting, things like that, because I'm not a parent. I know I spent a bunch of time with like some 3-year-olds at a birthday party yesterday, and that's the best birth control you could ever ask for if you ask me. So I'm not saying this to heap shame, but to remind us that the way we order our lives forms not only our own soul, but their souls too. The idols we live with can become the idols that they inherit. We're not called to coexist with our idols. We're called to tear them down. You don't counsel them you don't just let them exist, because idols don't belong in the presence of God. We have to come to the realization that if we live this way, our life will be so full. Our but our souls will be so empty. And it reminds me of the conversation that Jesus had with the rich man in Mark 10:21. And he asked him, I've done all these things, I've followed your commandments, but, what else can I do? I want to follow you. And this is what it says. It says, Jesus looked at him and loved him. One thing you lack. Go sell everything you have and give to the poor. You will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. And then you see that the man leaves distraught and upset. And Jesus doesn't say this to hurt him. He says it because he loves him. It's not that God doesn't want you to have nice things. He doesn't want nice things to have us. Jesus looked at him and loved him, but he knew that he loved his possessions more. He was settling for a counterfeit. He loved his idol and he was seduced. And I've heard people say things when we read this verse, Jesus doesn't really mean for us to sell everything we have. And I 100% agree with you, unless that thing is more important than him. And then he will ask you to tear it down. Maybe for you it's the idol of control. You've been gripping on every single outcome, trying to make it happen for you, every detail, but the anxiety hasn't left because control isn't peace. Dethroning that idol might look like stepping back and trusting God. Instead of constantly striving to make everything go your way, strive to make it go his way. It might look like realizing you're releasing your grip and saying things like, God, I trust you with the outcome. Maybe for you it's the idol of money and security. You're checking your bank account constantly, wanting that savings or that emergency fund to get its way up. And the safety net of money became your God rather than the refuge of God, instead of the shelter. It could be trusting him with your finances more. That's how you dethrone it. Putting him first in your budget before you even budget anything else, giving of your tithe. Being willing to let go of that fear of financial uncertainty and remember that he is our provider. Maybe for you it's the idol of validation or an idol of relationship. You love them, but deep down you know they've taken God's place in your life. You place their opinion over his. You're looking for others to heal you, complete you, fill you, and it's just not working out. So maybe dethroning that idol would look like having to say, God, I surrender my desire for this person into your hands. It might involve setting boundaries and making the effort to seek God first in your healing and place your identity in him. When Gideon obeyed God and tore down the altar to Baal, he didn't just leave the place empty, but he cut down the pole and used it as firewood, used it as fuel for his offering. This is a vivid picture, I think, of what God wants for us. He wants no trace of the other idols. Whether we tear down the idols in our lives, the things we're tempted to rely on or crave instead of him, God calls us not just to clear space, but also to fill it with himself. So my next point for you is after we've identified our idols, after we've teared them down, is we need to fill our soul with God. Psalm 84:2 says, my soul yearns, even faints, for the court of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. Psalm 107 verse 9, he satisfies the longing soul, and the hungry soul he fills with good things. Psalm 42, as the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, my God. The language in these verses is so massive, right? That longing, that yearning, that thirsting, that panting, that clinging. And I don't know about you, but that's not really in my vocabulary, if I'm being honest, when I'm talking about God. When do I use that language? I use that language when I say things like, I really, I need a holiday right now. Like, my body, I need to rest. Like, I can't go another day without another rest. Or maybe for you, it's just, I just need to have this drink to take the edge off. Otherwise, I won't be able to relax for my day. Maybe it's you saying, today's been so overwhelming, I just need to pick up my phone and just scroll and numb it out. I need it, I yearn for it, I long for it. To make my day better, this is where I will go. I crave more and more of what this world has to offer. And if we're not using this language for our God, our soul has been poisoned by false idols. Do we long for God like this? If not, could it be that idols have poisoned our affections? These are the kinds of things that we often long for in the place of God, right? Seeking escape, relief, validation from worldly sources, when only God can truly fill that longing. I heard this story, Max Lucado, if you know who he is. I had his book when I was like a kid, so I've known who he existed for ages. Anyway, he talks about this story, and he goes, think about it this way. Once upon a time, there was a fish in the ocean. Someone put the fish on sand, and the fish didn't look happy. So they're like, we'll give the fish this really nice house. We'll give this fish, a big wad of cash. And we'll ask the question, is the fish happy now? No, it's still flopping around, dying on the shore, right? And it's, okay, well, maybe we'll give it some more things. Let's just give it a nice box of Coronas, give it a little beach chair, sitting on the beach. How nice is that? Maybe we'll give it a little magazine to flick through, their favorite book. Okay, is the fish happy now? Obviously no. Why? Because give the fish anything and everything, and the fish is not going to be happy, because the fish was not created for the beach, it was created for water. You feel empty because you're trying to fill an eternal soul with a temporary world. If your lives are empty, here's a great piece of advice. You need to lower your expectations for the world, because you were not created for this world. You were created for the kingdom of God and His glory. So your soul will never be satisfied with anything else that this world has to offer. I don't want you to settle, and I don't want you to settle for anything less than what God has for you. If I could just get keys or guitar or whatever up, I don't know what you guys are doing. So I guess just to close my ideas of this whole thing of what do we do now, Ezekiel 36:25-26 says, "Then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. Your filth will be washed away, and you will no longer worship idols. And I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you." The more we love the world, the less we crave. Oh, sorry, I got it mixed up. That's probably not good. The more we love this world, the less room there is in our soul for God. The more we love God, the less we crave what this world has to offer. Let God take the rightful place, the throne of your heart. When He's first, everything else takes its proper place. Remember, the world will never satisfy. You weren't made for it. You were made for God's kingdom and His glory. Stop holding your sparkler and watch the fireworks. Remember, this isn't just about peace or balance or feeling a little bit better. It's about the state of your soul, and it's about His glory, the two eternal issues that should matter the most. And I guess why we sang that old song this morning is because it's been ringing in my head this whole time I've been doing this message, and I asked Rima last minute if he could do it, of Lord, I give you my heart, I give you my soul, I live for you alone. Every breath that I take, every moment I'm awake, Lord, have your way in me. You don't need a sparkler when He's offering fireworks. Let Him satisfy your soul with the only thing that lasts. And been praying that this moment would get through to everyone, that people wouldn't feel badly about themselves, like, oh my gosh, I've got all these idols. Because let's be honest, we all do. And maybe because I know that I've been praying so much about it, because this moment needs to get through to me as well. I don't want to get seduced by things that don't last. I don't want to settle any longer. I don't want to settle for anything less than God's best for me. And I don't believe that you do either. In just a moment, some music will play and we'll begin to sing and open up space for God to move. If the rest of the band could join, that would be cool. Let's give ourselves a space for our souls to detox, for our hearts to be honest, and for our lives to surrender. Lord, I give you my heart. I give you my soul. I live for you alone. Every breath that I take, every moment that I'm awake, Lord, have your way in me. So here's what we're going to do. I want to open up, a time of prayer for two things. The first is for people who want to give their lives to Jesus for the first time, or maybe you've felt distant and you want to recommit. And then the second is for people who have heard this message and know that there are idols in their life that need to be torn down, things taking the place of God, and that they're ready for a change. So I guess as everybody closes their eyes and bows their head, I'd love for you to reflect